The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And of course, you are listening to us at our second segment today, which is on the Durian Heat. We have someone, he's the Professor of Media and Communication Studies. Today he will be sharing with us on the subjugation of the press freedom in Malaysia. This is in relation with the slews of arrests of a few editors and journalists of the Malaysian media. He's also the Associate Dean of Research for the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences for the University of Nottingham, Malaysia campus. Hi, Professor Zaharom Nain.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. So, perhaps straight away we can go to the topic itself on press freedom. For you, you've been involved in this particular area for quite some time. What you can say about the recent arrest of media personnel in Malaysia?
Well, personally, I think it was overkill on the part of the authorities. It seems to be a continuing attempt at intimidation of journalists, intimidation of the media, and of intimidation of Malaysians generally. So, that's what I think about the recent arrest,
And if you can describe with us what happened prior to the arrest until the person was being discharged from the jail.
Well, what I know is, as much as you know, they were picked up. Initially, 3 journalists from the Malaysian Insider, and they were remanded. They were remanded for a night. I can't remember, but I know that the other 2, the editor-in-chief Zaharom and Ho Kay Tat, the publisher of The Age, were remanded for one night. And the initial 3 were not given. The magistrate let them go, and I guess the same thing with Zaharom and Ho Kay Tat. They were, as far as I know, nothing. Apparently they were arrested for a story they did on Hudud and what apparently was the outcome of the Council of Rulers meeting, which evidently was not true. So they were picked up for that, as far as I know.
So they were picked up because they were being investigated, or they just or the police want to conduct the investigation and just ask them a few questions?
Well, I think that's something you'd have to ask the police. From what I see, it seems as though they were picked up just because the police wanted to ask some questions. That's what as someone who just observed it, that seems to be the case. I think you'd have to ask Zaharom and gang, and you have to ask the police what were the reasons for them being picked up. But from the newspaper and other accounts, the media accounts, it seemed as though they were picked up because of one particular news article that they used, which they said was that the authorities said was untrue. But even if it was untrue, I don't think you need to use a sledgehammer to knock this journalist in the head and bring them in. I mean, the story can always be you can always question them at their offices, and why do they need to arrest them and bring them to the lockup? I think that is overkill on the part of the authorities. That was overkill on the part of the authorities.
So it's the case of Malaysian police overdoing their job rather than underdoing their job, as many Malaysians complain usually?
Well, I don't know. It seems to be the case. I mean, it wasn't something. The story itself was of national interest. Yeah, the story itself needed some verification, and all it needed was that. I mean, and apparently they tried verification with at least 3 sources, from what I hear, and how much more can you do? Yeah, so. Given that, I feel that the police should at least have just gone and discussed it with them. These are not common criminals you're talking about. These are, ordinary Malaysians who are doing their job. Yeah. So I don't think that kind of action, that kind of intimidation is necessary in a democratic country. I assume it's still a democratic country.
If the police were going to conduct a proper investigation over reports against the reporting of the TMI, for example, what should be the proper way of conducting the investigation?
Seriously, I'm not a policeman. I'm not a lawyer, so I'd be the wrong person for you to ask such a question. If you were to ask me about freedom of the press and the media, that I can talk about, but I'm not going to give my opinion on something which I feel I'm not an expert in. I mean, the procedures, they are there, I guess. I would hope that they are there in terms of investigation and all that, but I have no idea what these procedures are, whether they're investigating, media people, whether they're investigating Prakasa, but it just seems as though there seems to be two rules in being enforced here. On certain people, you just call them up to ask them. Other people, you drag them into the balai to ask them. So what those procedures are, I think more transparency on the part of the police might help. But I certainly can't say what those procedures are, and I certainly can suggest what those procedures should be. That's not my job. That's the job of the police.
Mm-hmm. Right. But at the same time, there were people calling that press freedom were being marked because of the incident that happened with the arrest of and the investigation against the journalists from TMI and also The Edge. But in your personal view, do you think so as well?
Press freedom. I said earlier. I think they could have just been that there could have just been a discussion with them. The police could have made inquiries without having to drag them. From their offices and so on and so forth. I think it could have been done in a much better way. I think it was overkill. I think it was a blatant. For me, it seemed a blatant attempt at intimidating them, because this comes hard on the heels of various other sort of actions like this. So I think it's just not for me. It's not a democratic way of doing things. Like I said, these are not common criminals. These are not hardened criminals. These are ordinary members of society doing their jobs, right? So and I feel they ought to be given a sense of dignity, them and the others who have been arrested, That's my feeling. So yes, in terms of the journalists, I think there was overkill. I think it says badly about the state of press freedom in our country, or even the state of freedom of expression in our country. I think people need to take stock of this. The police, journalists who are not objecting to it. I think they ought to take stock of the situation now and ask themselves, is it right for us to be treated this way? Because of course I don't think it's justified. And even the judge seemed to agree. They didn't agree to remanding the journalists further. So what is it all about? Why do you need to do that? That's my question. Why do you need to do that? I mean, one does that for terrorists, perhaps. But really, I mean, these are upstanding members of Malaysian society.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what that was being reported by TMI and that led to the arrest. Do you think religious issue is very sensitive to the extent that whenever it's being reported in a way that is not favorable to some segment of the society, people would somehow curb to even discuss about this?
Well, there's so many things that are deemed sensitive in the Malaysian context without any real explanation. I think there is the need to elaborate why people say things are sensitive. Evidently, these things that are deemed sensitive change over time. Certain periods, there are ethnic issues. Certain periods, there are religious issues, and even religious issues of a particular nature. So we've had this for so many years, and I think some clarification is necessary. Some transparency is necessary as regards what are deemed so-called sensitive issues. Who defines them? I think that there needs to be in place proper systematic and proper procedures of defining this kind of things. You just can't have one person saying this is seditious and getting people out to be arrested. Yeah, and I think that's just not on. So yeah, I mean, I have my own thoughts about what the sensitive issues are all about. Often they are issues that tend to threaten the regime in charge in many countries, including ours. So is that right? I don't know. You have to ask that yourselves. Yeah. But if it's meant to cover up a lot of issues, then I think that's not right in a democratic country. Yeah. To deem it sensitive so that you can cover it up, I think that's a bit silly. Yeah.
Can you maybe give us an example of a country that handles their sensitive issues well, where they can really have a dialogue and talk things out?
Quick answer to that, no.
Okay.
Like I said, it depends on what you mean by sensitive issues. Different countries have different levels of sensitivity, different notions of what sensitive issues are like. Different countries some are more open than others with regard to certain issues. Some are not open on other issues. Yeah. So I don't think there's one country that you can put up there and say, wow, this country is great. I mean, most people would want to say America is great. I would disagree. Yeah. But you do not cover up issues under the pretext of they being sensitive. Yeah. I think you need to explain why they are sensitive. Yeah. If for example, hudud is meant to be something that will affect the whole of Malaysia, I think greater discussion would be the order of the day. Yeah.
Talking about that, do you think because almost a lot of the issues in this country, especially it affects race and religion, is deemed sensitive, it has somehow affected the press freedom in this country in a way that reporters, journalists, editors cannot report freely, and sometimes or most of the time they have to self-censor themselves in order for them to be able to do business as usual without having to worry about the authorities tailing on their back?
Well, there are a lot of reasons why press freedom is in the state it's in, I would say. It's not just because of this notion of sensitive issues, yeah. Ownership and control of organizations, for example, media organizations, result in certain news being covered up, perhaps certain news being deemed more favorable than others. Yeah, the nature of the news organization itself affects the kind of news that will be produced. Yeah, so yes, deeming certain things sensitive and these things being very general in nature puts this big cover over journalists and others and who are fearful of what the implications are. So there's this whole process of socialization in the newsroom, socialization when they were studying, that lead to a lot of these journalists perhaps not wanting to cover this kind of issues. Yeah, when you have all these things over your head, you ask yourself, what's the point of doing this? So as a consequence, journalism suffers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To summarize, it's a combination of numerous factors, yeah, political, economic, cultural, social, yeah.
So historically, Malaysia has never really enjoyed, press freedom as much as other developed countries would have enjoyed it. Especially we have laws against or acts against those mainstream newspaper, especially involving the print media and broadcast media. But do you think in terms of online media, it's starting to get lesser and lesser freer for online journalists to report whatever they think is necessary? Okay,
a bit of you say historically, if you're talking about contemporary Malaysia, that's
contemporary
fine.
Malaysia.
Contemporary Malaysia, since 1980s,
since Mahathir's era?
Perhaps, yeah, you might be right there, but if you look at further back into history, the press in Malaysia had a very, very, at that time wasn't Malaysia, it was even Malaya then, were very, very strong against the colonialists and so on and so forth. There were some elements of the press that were very strong against the colonial powers. So historically, meaning if it's after 1980s, yes, there have been greater controls, there have been greater enforcement of those controls, implementation of those controls. So subsequently, yes, the press has been muscled over a period of time, and then emerged the internet. The internet generation in the 1990s, with the emergence first of Malaysia Kini, the whole Reformasi period, new internet media came about, and greater freedom evidently was experienced. There was a greater amount of reporting of issues from different sort of levels. So yes, there was that period. Abdullah Badawi's period, and so on. That period of rule. So now you're saying, do I think that there is greater control and the net is going back further and further? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
I feel there are attempts. Whether the net is, whether the media, the online media, is going to fight back or is effectively toned down. That's something we have yet to see. The reaction to the recent arrests have been pretty positive on the part of, you want to call it that, on the part of the online media. They've come out and said, we will not be cowed, and we'll see what happens. Essentially, I hope that the online media will still be brave enough to report without fear or favor, accurately, of course. But there are a lot of elements. There are a lot of things that needs to be taken into consideration, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But from your observation, have you seen some form of self-censorship or some form of decline in terms of press freedom, especially I'm talking about the online media segment?
No, I don't think so. If there were, I think there wouldn't have been this debacle surrounding the arrest of those 5 journalists, and 4 journalists and 1 publisher. If that were the case, then they wouldn't have reported certain issues. In fact, I see since at least the last general elections, there's been greater coverage of a lot of events. 1MDB, for example, which some people argue was the main reason for the arrest. I don't know. That's something that people will have to decide for themselves. Mm-hmm. Issues like that are national issues that affect us. The coverage on GST, for example. And the ongoing coverage of all these issues, I think, indicate to me not an online media that's cowed, but an online media that is still questioning, an online media that's grown more sophisticated in its sense, in terms of its reporting, in terms of its analysis of events. So I think on that front, I think there are a lot of things that one has to feel optimistic about and one has to encourage.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, we will take one short break. When we return, we will discuss on the press freedom in Malaysia.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
Okay, and we are back again with Professor Zaharom Nain from Nottingham University. And of course, we were discussing earlier off air a lot of issues regarding on press freedom. I know just now I asked question just regarding on the online media in Malaysia, and you seem to be very optimistic about it. But what about media as a whole? You gave a historical brief about what happened prior to Mahathir's period, during Mahathir's period, and of course post-Mahathir's period, when it comes to how our press were either having greater freedom and being curbed at one point and all that. But do you think it's a progression in a negative way and in a positive way in terms of the larger picture here?
Of course, I see it in a negative way on a larger picture, the media environment in Malaysia. Not only in the 1980s under Mahathir, but even before then. One has to look back to the Utusan strikes, for example, and how at the end of the day, UMNO took over Utusan. So once political parties get involved in the newspaper and media business generally, unfortunately, that leaves major problems in the kind of a media environment then, because the reports as we see now tend to be geared towards a particular point of view. I don't like to use the word biased, so subsequently you don't get a wide enough coverage, substantial coverage of what the situation is like in a particular country or even in a particular region. This is not only true of Malaysia, it's true of other countries as well in the region where you have political control, and we're talking about legal and also economic control of the media systems, and that's not been very healthy, I feel, and still isn't very healthy for democracy. Yeah, so. Given that, then you have newspapers, you have other media that tend to toe the official line, to toe a particular line, and then they become propaganda pieces rather than media that's meant to investigate issues and report on issues in a free and fair manner.
Mm-hmm. If that's the case, right? Is there any attempts by our media industry try to push the boundaries even further?
Well, the media industry, we are talking about the online media industry. I would say
in general.
In general, if you're talking about the traditional media of the press and television and even radio, with a few exceptions, there certainly haven't been any substantial attempts at pushing the boundaries. Yeah, mm-hmm. I mean, just look at the arrests of the 5 newspaper or 5 online media journalists. Right? How much coverage was there? How much objection was there in the mainstream media, So
internationally, yes. In fact, there were news reports about journalists from all over the world highlighted this issue, but locally, I'm not very sure about this.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about it. Of course, internationally, a lot of people, objected to it. Yeah, there was a minor, maybe you might call it international uproar, but what about our local journalists? I'm not talking about the international media. I'm talking about our local mainstream media, the newspapers and television. Yeah, don't talk about objecting to this. We're talking about just giving coverage. Yeah, so a lot of these things tend to be pushed aside. Yeah, so. As a consequence now, I believe many people tend to, at least in the urban areas, tend to consult the online media and believe in the online media than they do the mainstream media, right? Mm-hmm. One can only take so much of blatant propaganda, I guess. I mean, it becomes a bit boring, if nothing else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you get the same kind of story coming out, that everything is hunky-dory, and people don't believe that, especially when they got less money to spend, when they have to pay out more for a lot of things, then they realize, hey, the situation isn't as hunky-dory, as great as the media depict it to be, or at least the mainstream media depict it to be. So there's a limit to how much propaganda that can exist, yeah, especially when you get now the online media in the picture, yeah, and increasingly being seen as a legitimate, credible sort of alternative to the mainstream media. When you got that, then the mainstream media are in really, really deep trouble. You see, so as you can see from the circulation rates, yeah, as you can see from the dropping circulation rates of some of these newspapers, or many of these newspapers, so. At the end of the day, they're going to suffer, you see. But, of course, they will suffer in silence, primarily because they are owned and controlled, most of them owned and controlled by corporations that invariably are not going to be critical of the government of the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it just doesn't make economic sense in the long run, I guess, for these newspapers to continue doing this, or not newspapers and other media, of course.
But it's a catch-22 thing. It will jeopardize their economic profits, but at the same time, they also cannot do it because it's against the act that they have signed into, which is the Publication Act.
Why is it against the act? I mean,
I mean, when it comes to reporting things that are...
Presses and Publications Act, I think they should examine the Printing Presses and Publications Act and see how much leeway there is there in the first place. If you're saying that if they were to report things and the minister concerned removes the license, yes, it's still there, but that doesn't mean you lie down and play dead, There's still... you can still become a thinking newspaper or thinking media generally, but they're not even trying to do that in most cases. So that's shameful, that's quite pathetic, and subsequently the falling revenue justifies that, It's justified, the falling revenue is justified because you come up with garbage, invariably, at some point people are going to say, hey, I'm not going to buy this, so especially if yesterday they started charging GST for newspapers, which they shouldn't have, but that's another story altogether about the failure of the implementation at this present moment of the GST. Anyway, so they'll have to decide, whether they want to be a newspaper or whether they want to be a propaganda sheet. And if they become a propaganda sheet and they don't sell, then I don't think they have anybody else to blame themselves. Yeah. So. Yeah, so the way around it, I guess you need some kind of ombudsman system or a guide for them, not by the government, but by society as a whole. Yeah, that will require a little bit of thinking, given the current political climate in the context of Malaysia. Yeah, one can plan, of course, but of course, on the other hand. Those plans need to be implemented and enforced, and I don't think the present government would want to have those kind of plans because the pattern seems to be they like to have control. Well, if they have the control and the people, the general population do not like that control, invariably they won't buy the stuff, So, which to me is reflected, like I said, in the current circulation rates that are there, It seems to indicate that people do not buy the stuff. So if you want to continue making a loss, that's fine. And if you can subsidize the loss, fine. As long as you don't subsidize it using my money,
That's a very interesting justification. On another hand, let's focus on the arrest itself because apparently the arrest is under the guise of, they might be breaching the Sedition Act. But do you think this is giving the perception there's perhaps an re-emergence of the ISA's Operasi Lalang, which happened during Dr. Mahathir's time?
The emergence of the ISA. People say that the POTA, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which is being a bill, which is still a bill now, which is being going to be tabled in Parliament, is going to be is actually a reintroduction of the ISA. I don't know. I haven't been able to see it. I don't think many MPs have been able to see it. That's another thing. You want to have a bill, I think you need to have all your MPs being able to discuss and debate it, but all this is shrouded in secrecy, lack of transparency. It's a bit problematic, for me at least, as a citizen of this country. Now, whether this arrests are obscure, I would say yes and no. I think one has to go back to 1987 to see how bad Ops 1 was in that sense. Operasi Lalang was at that point in time. How a lot of people were immediately detained. How newspapers were closed down. And we're not talking about one newspaper, we're talking about at least three. So in 1987, and the people who were detained was like virtually all of the main opposition politicians and other civil society members, academics as well. So this present climate of arresting people, there are differences. Because it's a Sedition Act, they have to be brought to the courts, whereas previously under ISA they could be detained indefinitely. So I think for me, because I lived through 87 and I lived through Reformasi and I'm seeing this now, Thus far, I think it's less frightening than Ops Lalang. Yeah, it was a vicious, very, very vicious attempt at curbing dissent at that point in time, and even curbing alternative voices. I see instances of that now, and it's being done over a period of time. Yeah, Ops Lalang was one fell swoop. They got 100+ people under detention. Yeah, this one is like over a period of 2 months. You've arrested, you release, you arrested, you release, which is what they have to do under the Sedition Act, as far as I know. So in terms of the numbers, perhaps you could say they're similar to what Ops Lalang was all about. Yeah, but in terms of the intensity, in terms of the time frame, there are differences, and so far, touch wood, they have not closed down media organizations yet. Yeah.
Do you see that, or do you foresee that there will be more people being arrested under the guise of Sedition Act, even though it's just a short term, like 1 day remand or investigation, quote unquote?
Again, the patterns indicate so. Yeah, but again, whether more people will be arrested or not, I think that's something you'll have to ask Mr. Twitter himself. Okay.
I thought you could read his mind.
Bob King is got nothing to do with me. I would hope not. I would hope not in a democratic country. In a so-called democratic country like Malaysia, you would think that this kind of things shouldn't happen. Yeah, but they have happened over the past month or so, and I would hate to think that more of that will happen.
We'll take one short break. When we return, we will talk about the way forward, as well as the recent arrest of a 17-year-old Amos for his YouTube video on Lee Kuan Yew.
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas and critical opinions in Southeast Asia.
Hi, this is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
Of course, we are back again with our well-articulated Professor Zaharom Nain on press freedom in Malaysia. But of course, now we are going to talk about a different issue, which is also related to freedom of information or press freedom. This is regarding on a 17-year-old Amos He. Recently, he posted a YouTube video on his rant about Lee Kuan Yew, and because of that, he was arrested. And some international agencies, media agencies, were actually vocal about this, saying that he has the right to say whatever he wants. This is part of the freedom of expression. But of course, in Singapore, freedom of expression is limited. So we would like to know your thoughts on this, Professor Zaharom Nain.
About my thoughts on Amos.
Famous Amos.
Amos, yeah. Well, I personally believe, I saw the video. I thought he was a pretty articulate young man. Yeah, a very articulate young man, and could very well become a video star, he
already was, since a couple of years ago, in fact.
Yeah, that's what I heard. At the age of 13, he was already saying things that upset a lot of people. Well, I think one of the tasks of many people is to upset a lot of people. So, I think he upset a lot of people who felt the timing was wrong. Yeah. That it was tasteless, perhaps. Some of the language he used was a bit colorful, let's put it that way. So in that sense, yeah, perhaps they are right. I guess the middle class values were being badly affected, so they were quite upset. They are right. They're right. They were upset, but I don't think he should have been arrested for that. He could have been told off. Those who didn't like what he had to say could also do a video and upload it on YouTube and support whatever they want to support. Yeah. Perhaps the timing was wrong. Like I said, Lee Kuan Yew had just passed away. And maybe that was not the right time to do it.
But it's also an indication that his policy stays, even though he's not there physically.
I don't know whether they're his policies or whether they're PAP's policies, but you're talking about arresting the young man. That's part of the policy. I don't know. That's something the Singapore police have got to answer for. Not for me to say whether they're right or wrong. But of course, I think it is a bit like the case in Malaysia. Although Malaysia was worse, I think it was overkill on their part to arrest. But perhaps they're going to say they're just going to question him. I don't know what the latest is. But he said it. I think more than half the people who heard what he had to say have forgotten what he had to say. So it's past, I mean, he said it. It was to some people offensive. Okay, there are a lot of things that are more offensive, I feel, in this world, So by their judgment, he ought to be told off. But some other people are saying, "Oh, he's only a young man." I think this age thing we've got to be very careful about being patronizing in that sense, condescending. Yeah, I think he being so articulate. I mean, he's he sounds like a brilliant sort of person, and I feel he will go far.
Mm-hmm.
I feel PAP would do well to recruit him into the party.
They already have that in mind.
Yeah, which is the way they do it in Singapore, which is a very, very clever way of getting rid of dissent. Yeah, maybe they ought to think about doing that in Malaysia as well.
So you'll see Zaharom back in the mainstream media.
Yeah, maybe they should recruit you to be UMNO's major spokesperson or something like that. Recruit the younger ones. And Java's a bit old already. So anyway, let's talk about Amos Lee. So yes, he said what he had to say. It has been said. It's on video. So people are upset about it, understandably so, given the timing. But does he deserve to be arrested and all that? I don't think so. But that's me. So, but yeah, has he been arrested?
Yes, he was. In fact, he was being charged and also being bailed. Yeah. I mean, Singapore has its laws. Far be it for me to say anything bad about Singapore's laws when we have our laws as well, right? Which are equally good. On the bigger picture here, it's about media freedom, not just in Malaysia or in Singapore, but I guess press freedom in the whole of Southeast Asia. So I know you probably already know what to answer this, but do you think ASEAN can be seen as a credible regional organization on human rights, especially on protecting media freedom?
Well, I think ASEAN, meaning the ASEAN countries, will have to look at themselves first, and ask themselves, each of these countries, have we really expanded on media freedom in our individual countries, Are we really interested in expanding media freedom in our countries? I think, and they have to answer those questions as honestly as possible. If you look at Singapore, you look at Malaysia, you look at Cambodia, you look at Burma now, Myanmar, and even Thailand at the present moment, one of the bastions of free media until the recent coup, although today I heard there's no more military rule, so they say. If you look at the states in ASEAN, Brunei, Singapore, if I haven't mentioned Singapore already, I mean, we really do not have an enviable record of freedom, media freedom, or even freedom of expression. So given that, I think we have to get our houses in order first before we come up with grand plans for the whole of ASEAN, as the Malay saying goes, cakap tak serupa bikin, It's about walking the talk, So really, it is nice to think that ASEAN is, at the forefront of trying to become, the bastion for human rights and freedom of expression. But if you say that and you don't practice those kind of things, the rest of the world's just going to laugh at you, But at the end of the day, then you ask yourself, does it really matter if the rest of the world laughs at us? If you feel it doesn't really matter, then
they are happy to be in their own club. That means
do whatever you want to do until the people in your country start saying, look, this is not right,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think ASEAN ministers need to understand that they are also answerable to the people who are in their countries, So I think that they have to gauge that kind of temperature as well, So the various voices of dissent in their countries. Yeah, I mean, you cannot be criticizing Burma, for example, as they did before Aung San Suu Kyi was released. You can't be criticizing Burma, and at the same time, you look at your backyard. You find it's not any better here. You know what I mean. So I think you really, ASEAN and member states in ASEAN really need to examine themselves, I feel.
So the key question here: how can we improve media freedom in this country? Is it completely to change the government, or to do something maybe a bit more tamer?
Tamer like what? Well, firstly, I think to
like replying Mr. Twitter.
No. I mean, firstly, if you're really I think you have to be very serious about what you're saying. Yeah, you have to be sincere about it. Yeah. You have to understand what media freedom is. And I'm not talking about us. I'm also talking primarily about the powers that be. Yeah. They have to ask themselves: do they want media freedom, and do they want greater freedom or not? And I think their answer would be no. With the large majority of them. Primarily because they feel they can hold on to power as long as you control the media in that sense. Yeah, I mean, it's not really something that's true of Malaysia. It's evident in many other countries where they cling on to control of the media. But if you want to talk about international standards, if you want to talk about greater democracy in a very real sense, then I think you should start examining what your own particular notions of democracy and standards. Yeah, so. It requires people who are leading to be agreeable to change. Some of my friends will be laughing at this. Them agreeable to change. But I live in hope. That can happen. It requires changes and in attitude and beliefs on different fronts at different levels. Yeah. So on the part of the powers that be, they would need to say that yes, we are defenders of democracy, yeah, and this is what democracy is all about. And really, we are genuinely concerned about the people knowing more, so that that they can make the proper decisions, which is what it's all about. In any case, when you have freedom of expression, different points of view are voiced, and based on the different points of view, people make informed decisions. But if you do not have freedom of expression and of information, then people have very limited sources with which they can make their decisions. Yeah. So it needs an enlightened government, so to speak, a government that wants the people to be as enlightened as well. Yeah. Does that sound impossible? I don't think so. It might take a period of time. I mean, at some point, we all thought the 2/3 majority by the Barisan Nasional was a done deal. That they would never break down. That the others would never break down the 2/3 majority. Well, 2008 happened. Yeah. So nothing is impossible, but it requires a government that's enlightened and wants to enlighten the people. It requires various sort of legislation that will result in ownership and control of media not being in the hands of a few, but being is freely available for as many people as possible. Yeah, it requires that kind of freedom. Yeah, freedom in an economic sense, freedom in a legal sense, freedom in a political sense. Yeah. It can happen, but the people have got the people. I always believe it comes from the people. The people need to believe that this needs to happen. Yeah, yeah. So as long as the people don't want it to happen, then it won't. I believe it won't happen, because unless you have a benign government, and a benign government is as rare as the dodo, you see. So this kind of situation requires the people to speak up. And of course, like I said, there are controls, so there are problems there.
So at the end of the day, it's all about the will of the people, and of course the political will of those in power as well.
Transferring the political will to political action.
Okay. Anyway, we are towards the end of our show. Thank you, Professor Zaharom Nain, for sharing your view.
Thank you.